Well, Defence Minister Richard Marles says Australia could still buy 5 US Virginia-class submarines under AUKUS, but is confident 3 will suffice. At the weekend, Mr. Marles said Australia was planning on buying 3 second-hand Virginia-class submarines instead of 1 new submarine and 2 used ones under the 2021 deal. So let's get more on this with Dr Raji Rajagopalan, Resident Senior Fellow at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Good to have you back on the program with us. So, as right now, no new Virginia-class submarines. What difference does it make to Australia's defence capabilities in sort of limiting purchases to second-hand ones? Will the Navy be worse off?
I think it's still a good decision because these are in-service submarines that have just been taken by the U.S. Navy very recently in the last few years. And given that these submarines have something like 33 years in service, I think we still are in a good position. So Australia's decision to buy all 3 in-service submarines is still a good one. And I think it comes with a lot of benefits, particularly on the cost front, because one, of course, these might be slightly cheaper. We don't know how much, but it could be still slightly cheaper than a brand new one. But second, imagine you having to operate multiple submarines. In fact, the Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Marles talked about there was the possibility of Australia having to operate 4 different submarines, the current Collins class, and then you have two versions of the Virginia class submarines, and then of course the brand new SSN AUKUS when they come into operation. So having to do that maintenance cost for all of those, I think that's still quite a bit of a challenge, in addition to other supply chain issues and so on and so forth. So I think this is still a good call for Australia to go for the in-service 3 ones rather than 2 in-service ones and a brand new Virginia-class submarine.
So operational simplicity was the reason for this. Why was this not even factored? Why was this not even thought about initially when the deal was signed?
So I think this is a very complex and complicated process in place in terms of acquiring new nuclear-powered submarines. These are a huge amount of engineering and technicalities involved in terms of how you go on to develop these. So how quickly you are able to develop these, there are lots of different processes. You're getting the engineers and the human resources in place, whole range of things to be worked out. So I think for us, the more important thing is that we don't have a gap in between, and therefore how do we fill in that gap before you completely. So how do you maintain that ratio, which is the most critical thing as far as Australia is concerned, and the same goes for UK as well. So how do we maintain an operational tempo in terms of our capacities? I think that's where this decision was taken, and I would think that's it's a good decision to go with the in-service submarines rather than one new and 2 in-service submarines.
Yes, and so the assumption would be that the timeline should be brought forward significantly for us to finally see the submarines and then see them in Australian waters. How soon then do you believe we would get these subs?
I think we are still looking at early 2030s, and should there be a delay with the SSN AUKUS SSNs, then I think you will need to rethink. Maybe we need to go for another Virginia class, but otherwise you're currently looking at getting 3 in-service Virginia class submarines by early 2030s. I think that's a timeline that we are roughly looking at in a sense.
Yes, of course, the language in the past after AUKUS was signed was for 3 to 5 submarines. They're not saying that anymore. So will we ever see a situation where, a fifth of, 4 and 5 submarines coming up, or, should we read that language to completely rule it out?
No, I don't think we are ruling it out completely. I don't think the leadership, I wouldn't know exactly the political calculations behind this, but from what I can see from those statements, when I read those statements, what I say is that there is a possibility of the 4th and 5th should there be a need, should there be a significant delay with the AUKUS assistance, then at that stage, we are going to go back to getting additional submarines. Fourth and fifth should be coming in for sure.
And of course, we know China is a significant power in the Indo-Pacific. How would Beijing be viewing this I suppose, alteration in AUKUS?
I think in any case, we know from the time the AUKUS agreement was signed how China has responded to it. It is China's aggression, aggressive behavior, aggressive deployment across the Indo-Pacific waters that is pushing a lot of the countries out of their comfort zone to acquiring some of these new capabilities in a sense. But China is clearly very, very critical. In fact, when the AUKUS agreement came up at the International Atomic Energy Agency, I remember China even put up a resolution working with Russia and a few other partners to somehow put a strong block against the AUKUS in a sense. But clearly, Australia had done an excellent outreach effort, and therefore a lot of countries, including some of the countries like India, that actually does not usually go out of their way to extend this kind of a support. They went out of their way to extend full support behind AUKUS, behind Australia, because I think a lot of the countries in the region are responding to how China is developing. One, China is developing massive military capabilities and, of course, strategic capabilities as well. And the lack of transparency around China's military modernization is a real concern for everyone. So China's objections taken note of, but at the same time, I don't think that would really that would put us in any comfort zone. So we are going to, I think, having to sort of respond to China's growing capabilities and growing assertive, aggressive behavior. Therefore, we will continue.
Okay, Dr. Raji Rajagopalan, really appreciate your insights there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.